Hello and welcome to the Trust Factor Podcast, the only podcast that guarantees your success when you implement its divine age-old teachings. So it's story time, my friends. We're going to get into a little bit of storytelling, a couple of examples from the book, and maybe one from real life. And the whole point over here is to get across why it is and how it is that divine providence works, and how we are to utilize it, how we are to make it a part of our day-to-day so that things start to make sense, so that we start to get rid of the concepts of fear and anger and jealousy and hatred. That's what divine providence enables us to do. But right now, it could be a high-level theoretical concept. We need to bring it down to our level. We need to bring it down to a point where you and I can sink our teeth into it, and we can recognize this every single day in our lives because it happens. We have instances that happen, good or seemingly bad, that happen to us that we think are random, that we think are not good, and therefore we start to get upset. I had one just this morning. Maybe I'll use that as an example later on. But let's get back to the book first and see what the book has to say on this subject. It says, the Bible gives an example of someone who killed a person accidentally, in a manner that wasn't at all premeditated. He was chopping wood with his axe, and the blade flew off the handle and killed an individual who was standing nearby. Yet, as the famed commentator Rashi says, that the killing wasn't accidental. The dead person deserved to be killed for some crime that he did that was never discovered, and the killer, who is punished with exile, had committed some undiscovered wrongdoing that is punishable by exile. Nothing is happenstance, and everything that occurs in the world is a product of divine providence. A flesh and blood bystander sees that a person stood under a ladder and got killed. A person fell off the ladder right on top of him and killed him. It looks like an accident, but in truth, it's the product of divine justice and numerous considerations down to the tiniest details. Gives another example over here, a bit of a story that tries to get the point across. It says, Moses wanted to understand the ways of the Creator. The Creator said to Moses, come up to me on the mountain. On the way up the mountain, Moses saw a strange sight. A person came to drink water from a brook, and when he bent down to drink, his wallet, full of money, fell out of his pocket without his noticing. He got up and continued on his way. A second person came to drink from the brook, found the wallet, picked it up, and continued on his way. A third person came to drink from the brook. While he was still drinking, the first person returned, searching for his lost wallet. The first person asked the third person, did you find my wallet? The third person denied that he had found any lost wallet. Seething with anger, the first person killed the third person. Seeing such a spectacle, Moses was baffled. He asked the Creator for an explanation. Why did the second person get away unscathed? Why was the innocent third person killed? The Creator said to Moses, everything you have seen is truth. The first person stole the wallet from the second person. So the wallet came back to its rightful owner, who was obviously the second person. The third person, who was killed, murdered the first person's father, something that the first person wasn't even aware of. I arranged things so that the first person would avenge his father's blood. Everyone received what he deserved in absolute justice. Now, again, stories that seem to be ones that are a little bit hard to understand or need more explanation. Let me give you a couple of examples of how we take this idea of divine providence and apply it to our lives in a practical way. I'll start with one that happened to my son a little while ago, maybe almost a year ago. My son was a young guy, 20, maybe 19, 20 at the time, just starting out, has a job, business, just starting, fledgling, making a little bit of money, not much, living at home, doing what most 19 or 20-year-olds are doing. He goes out for lunch in the middle of the day, and he is sitting and enjoying his lunch. And somebody walks in to this kosher restaurant and is looking for charity, looking for people to give them money to help them out. He gets over to my son, and he asks my son if he'd like to give charity. And my son says, sure. So the individual says, how much? And he pulls out a Visa machine that he could swipe a credit card on. My son says, $3. The individual says, how about $5? My son says, $5 it is. The individual then takes my son's credit card, and swipes it on the machine. My son takes a look and sees that on the screen it says 25. My son says to the individual, I thought we said $5. The individual says, 5, 25, what's the big deal? And turns around and walks away. Now, we're in Canada. That $25, unbeknownst to my son, was also in US dollars. So what should have been a $5 investment turned into a $30 or $35 donation. Now, most people would get irate. Most people would cause a scene. Most people would chase after the individual and get him to reverse the charge or make a scene and call him out in public. My son didn't. He chose not to. I don't know why. Maybe he was a little bit on the young side and unsure of himself at the time, but he let it go. He brought the question to me, and my take was the following. You could do one of two things. You could get very upset about it, and you can let it ruin your day that you lost 20 odd, 30 odd dollars, whatever it is. Or that somebody cheated you, which is never a good feeling. Or you can accept the fact that that money went to charity, that you had to give that money. Those $30 that you were supposed to give that you weren't planning on giving away were actually required for you to give away. And had you not, you would have been charged with much, much more than that. Also, recognize that this individual is walking around asking for charity. That's not an easy thing to do. Now, is he a criminal? I don't know. But at the end of the day, you wanted to give charity. It was your understanding that you were giving charity, and therefore you get full reward for that charity, whether or not you were giving it. In other words, whether or not this individual needed it and was actually collecting, my son benefited from giving that amount of charity. That is the outlook, that everything is perfect, that God sent that individual to my son and that he paid that amount of money because it was supposed to be paid by him, not the individual receiving it. That individual receiving it was obviously unethical and immoral, but he did what he did. And my son ended up benefiting because of this individual's immorality. He gave charity in an amount that he had no intention of giving. It was done because Hashem loves him and wanted him to give that charity to save him from having to pay potentially much more than that. That's just one way of understanding divine providence that eases the burden, that lowers the flame, that turns down the temperature. When you're about to get all heated under the collar, when you're about to do something foolish, pull back, reassess, and try and understand maybe there's a bigger picture over here that I'm missing. And I'll tell you what happened to me just this morning. You know I'm in the land of Israel, which is the holiest place in the world. But it says, Israel niknet be'yisurim. Israel is acquired with tribulations. It's because it's a difficult place to live for many, many reasons, some of them even biblical reasons. If you want to come to Israel, be prepared to struggle to come to Israel. And while you're here, be prepared to struggle in ways that you don't have to struggle outside of the land of Israel. Happened to me this morning. Parking tickets in Jerusalem, trying to pay them, a complete debacle. I ended up paying for a ticket, a 250 shekel ticket, which I never got. They told me that I had it, never was on my car, and they weren't able to send me a copy of the actual ticket. But yet I paid it. So there was 250 shekels gone. Now I could have gotten really upset. I could have let it affect my day. I could have let it made me feel bad. I could have raised all kinds of concerns with government offices, but you know what? I pulled back, and at this stage, I've let go, and I've realized the very same thing. That, for me, is what's called kaparat avonot. It is an atonement for sins. I've done things that I'm sure I shouldn't have done, as we all do. And if it only costs me 250 shekels from my loving Creator, who I know loves me infinitely, and I know bends the system in order for me to get away with paying very little to compensate for something that I should have paid a lot more for, that means that those 250 shekels saved me a lot of heartache, a lot of hardship. And so instead of being upset about it, I'm recognizing that, number one, I'm in the land of Israel. I'm giving money to the land of Israel. That, in and of itself, in my mind, is plenty reason to not fight. But on top of that, I know that there is this thing called divine providence, that God is watching out for me, that He loves me, and that He's giving me an opportunity to clean up my messes in a very cheap, discounted way. Those 250 shekels were really a massive, severe discount of what I should have really paid for. When you have that outlook, my friends, when that's the approach to life, in every situation, fear, hatred, ire, anger, angst, all those things go out the window. You calm your fears, you calm your hatred and your anxiety and your worries almost immediately. And it's a muscle. You have to work on it. It's not something you're born with. The longer we live, the more responsibilities we take on, the more things we do wrong, the more we have to atone, the more we have to compensate. We have to suffer the consequences of our action, but remembering that the consequences that we're suffering are literally a small, tiny fraction of those which we are supposed to pay, of what we really owe. That should make you not just not be upset, but that should make you extremely, extremely happy. Have an amazing day. Thank you for spending time with us on the Trust Factor podcast. If you've heard something today that moved you, save this episode and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss upcoming conversations that challenge, empower, and uplift. And if you're on social media, connect with us. Leave your thoughts. Drop a quote that resonated with you. Hashtag the Trust Factor podcast. Until next time, keep growing in your trust and keep living with purpose. I'm Jesse Revivo, and this has been the Trust Factor podcast. Thanks for listening.